Dale saw Brenda's hand brush Todd Peterson's arm at the country club, a touch too long, too familiar. The casual glance they exchanged held a secret language, locking him out of a joke only they shared. Some people just can't keep their hands to themselves, can they, Dale? Todd chuckled, his eyes glinting, leaving Dale feeling like a fool. Dale Miller stood on a rise of his newly acquired farmland, the chill October wind whipping around him. The land stretched out, fertile and vast, a strategic anchor for the luxury resort he envisioned. He was in his early 50s, a man who had built an empire from nothing, his success carved from rivers of pride from shrewd decisions and relentless work. This new acquisition, 70 acres of prime Midwestern soil, represented not just profit, but a legacy. The silent promise of the landscape was a stark contrast to the hollow quiet of his opulent city mansion. He drove back, the silence of the luxury car almost deafening. The mansion, a monument to his achievements, now felt cold, too large for one man and a woman who was increasingly absent. His marriage to Brenda, once a foundation, had become a strained affair, held together by routine more than affection. Lately, Brenda had grown distant. Her phone calls were hushed, her voice lowered as she spoke in the sunroom, glancing over her shoulder. She had new clothes, dresses he didn't recognize, too vibrant for her usual conservative taste. She wore them when she went out alone, claiming errands or friend lunches. One Tuesday evening, the silence of the house was broken by Brenda's voice drifting down the main staircase. Dale had been in his study, reviewing blueprints, when he heard it. The door was ajar. Her voice, usually soft, was now confident, almost secretive, laced with a familiar intimacy. "No, he has no clue. Stop worrying, Todd. I said I'd handle Dale, didn't I?" A pause followed, filled only by the hum of the refrigerator from the kitchen. Then a low male voice, indistinct but unmistakably Todd's, spoke briefly. Brenda's soft laugh followed, a light, almost girlish sound, completely unfamiliar to Dale. It was immediately followed by the distinct sound of a kiss. Dale remained still, the blueprint crinkling slightly in his hand. The pieces snapped together with a brutal clarity. Todd Peterson. Dale had known Peterson for years, a rival in the real estate game, though never quite on Dale's level. Dale's mind raced, connecting this personal betrayal to recent professional anxieties. He recalled an email from his legal team, flagged just last week, detailing aggressive moves by Todd Peterson, now identified as Todd Michaels in some reports, in a neighboring county, possibly threatening Dale's own expansion plans. The overlapping names, the competitive maneuvers, the intimate phone call. It painted a picture far more intricate than a simple affair. It suggested conspiracy. Later that evening, Brenda descended the stairs, dressed in one of the new brightly patterned blouses. She offered a hurried explanation about a late yoga class and an urgent graduation dinner for Megan, their daughter, with her college friends. "Don't wait up, Dale," she said, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. He met her gaze, his own calm and unreadable. He simply nodded. "Have a good time, Brenda," he replied, his voice even. He watched her leave, the front door clicking shut, a hollow sound echoing through the mansion. His facade held, but inside his resolve hardened to an unyielding steel. He did not wait up. By 4 a.m., the first sliver of dawn touching the horizon, Dale had made his calls. Private investigators were tasked with uncovering every detail of Brenda's movements, every phone call, every meeting. Legal counsel was alerted, instructed to prepare for the protection of every asset, every interest he possessed. He would protect his business, his legacy, and what remained of his family. The next morning, Dale met his longtime business partner, Frank Johnson, at their downtown office. Frank, a man of quiet loyalty and sharp intellect, listened without interruption as Dale laid out his suspicions. "Todd Peterson is making a play," Dale stated, leaning forward, his voice low. "Not just for land, Frank, for Brenda. And I think she's helping him. She's given him information. I'm sure of it." He detailed the overheard conversation, the shift in Brenda's demeanor. Frank's expression remained grim. "We've seen Peterson circle your projects before, Dale. He's always wanted a piece of what you have." Dale looked out the window at the city skyline, a landscape he had shaped. "My biggest concern now is Megan. Brenda's a master manipulator. I don't want Megan caught in the crossfire, used in some scheme Brenda's cooked up for financial autonomy. He knew Brenda well enough to anticipate her next steps, leveraging their shared assets, positioning herself to take a significant stake. He could almost hear her, already discussing his farmland project, perhaps even detailing ways to subtly undermine him to secure a better financial position for herself. He knew she would use Peterson to sabotage him if it benefited her. Dale just needed the proof. He would anticipate her every move, preparing for the legal battle that lay ahead, understanding the cold, calculated nature of her betrayal. The envelope was heavy, sealed with the private investigator's discreet emblem. Dale sat alone in his study, the city lights a distant blur outside the window. Inside, the contents laid bare the ugly truth. Glossy photographs, time-stamped and location-specific, showed Brenda and Todd Peterson. There were shots of them exiting discreet downtown restaurants, laughing, Peterson's hand lingering on Brenda's lower back. Others depicted Brenda's car parked for hours at Peterson's private office garage. Accompanying these were detailed call logs, dozens of calls, many initiated late at night, some lasting over an hour between Brenda's personal cell and a number identified as Todd Peterson's. It was all cold, hard confirmation. Not a single emotional adjective was needed. The facts spoke for themselves. Simultaneously, his business intelligence team delivered news about Todd Peterson's company. They were making aggressive moves, acquiring key distribution rights for specialty materials and services, the exact kind needed for a high-end luxury resort. Peterson was not just competing, he was attempting to cut off Dale's supply lines, directly threatening the viability of his farmland project. The betrayal was no longer just personal, it was a professional ambush, orchestrated from within his own home. Brenda, meanwhile, had grown bolder in her requests. "Dale, I've been thinking," she'd started one morning over coffee, her voice light, almost conversational. "It's time I had a bit more financial independence. Perhaps we could transfer some of the joint investment accounts into my name directly? For clarity, so I can manage my own affairs without bothering you with every little decision." She presented it as a reasonable step for a modern woman, but Dale recognized the calculated move to secure her position. He began subtly auditing her spending. The numbers, usually predictable, now showed inconsistencies. Large, unexplained withdrawals from their joint checking account. Hundreds, sometimes thousands at a time. Receipts for expensive gifts, men's watches, custom golf clubs, that never appeared in their house. Dale felt a quiet anger, not a flash, but a slow internal burn, knowing this money was funding her betrayal. Megan, their daughter, had also changed. Her once open demeanor towards him had cooled. She spent more time on her phone, gave shorter answers, and avoided his gaze when he asked about her day. "Mom just feels like you don't trust her decisions," she'd commented one evening, scrolling through social media, a subtle defensiveness in her tone. "She just wants to be happy, Dad." The words were like tiny shards of glass, placed there by Brenda, slowly poisoning their daughter's perception. Dinner that week was a silent battlefield. Dale tried to probe to understand this new Brenda. "You've been very busy lately," he ventured, watching her push food around her plate. "New interests?" She looked up, a brittle smile on her face. "Just yoga, Dale. And Patty, you're being paranoid. Why are you always so suspicious?" Her dismissal was sharp, a practiced deflection. Frank Johnson called later that night. "Dale, Peterson's company, they're moving too fast, too aggressive. It doesn't quite make sense, the capital they're deploying. Almost like they have inside information." Frank's unease mirrored Dale's own. It was a confirmation of the depth of the scheme. Dale's legal team was already in motion. He instructed them to prepare ironclad preemptive measures, injunctions, non-compete clauses, asset protection filings, anticipating every possible maneuver Brenda and Peterson might attempt. He was building an impenetrable fortress around his business. Brenda's attempts to access his confidential business documents grew less subtle. She would casually lean over his shoulder when he worked at his laptop, asking innocuous questions about his projects, her eyes scanning the screen. She once accidentally knocked over a stack of files, her hands lingering on the labels as she picked them up. Dale observed, cold and calm. He decided to set a trap. He created a fictitious file, Farmland Phase 2, Geothermal Energy Partnership. It detailed a fabricated preliminary agreement with a non-existent company, Midwest Green Solutions, for a crucial energy supply to his resort. He left the file prominently displayed on his desk, knowing Brenda's habits. 2 days later, Frank called again. Dale, I just heard from a contact. Peterson's team is suddenly asking around about geothermal specialists. Seems they're trying to pivot their new resort concept. Coincidence? It wasn't. Brenda had taken the bait. A confrontation was inevitable. The weight of his family crumbling around him was a heavy, dull ache. He wrestled with how to expose Brenda without utterly destroying Megan's world, without alienating her forever. He needed proof so undeniable that Megan couldn't ignore it, yet presented with a careful hand. Then, the public announcement. Todd Peterson, beaming from newspaper headlines and online articles, announced a new luxury resort project, the Lakeshore Sanctuary, directly competing with Dale's farmland vision. The accompanying photo showed Peterson with a slight, almost imperceptible smirk, his eyes seeming to bore directly into Dale's, a public declaration of his triumph. Brenda continued her quiet campaign with Megan. Your father is so controlling, honey. He doesn't understand that I need my own life, my own space. The words chipped away at Megan's loyalty, turning her further from him. Dale felt the raw, personal pain, but pushed it aside. He had built his empire on decisiveness, on never letting emotion cloud judgment. He could not afford that luxury now. He would act, and he would protect what was his. The polished mahogany of the dining table reflected the dossier Dale laid before Brenda. It contained the investigators' photographs, the exhaustive call logs, and printouts from their joint bank accounts, highlighting the unexplained withdrawals and lavish gifts. Brenda sat across from him, her posture rigid. He watched her face as she scanned the documents. Her initial reaction was a sharp intake of breath, followed by a fleeting mask of confusion. What is all this, Dale? You've gone completely mad. Her denial was immediate, almost theatrical, but it quickly fractured. Her eyes darted from the evidence to a steady gaze, then back to the photos of her and Todd Peterson. The mask dropped. You think you know everything, don't you? She spat, her voice rising. Always buried in your business, never here. What did you expect, Dale? I needed someone who saw me, who listened. Her tirade was a torrent of accusations, blaming him for their distant marriage, his relentless focus on his work, for every perceived slight over 2 decades. It was an attempt to shift the narrative, to make him the villain in a story of her own making. Their mansion, once a place of quiet, accustomed luxury, now felt like a mausoleum. The silence between them was thick, heavy, punctuated only by Brenda's sharp, cutting words, each one a calculated strike. Dale listened, his expression unwavering, letting her exhaust herself. When she finally paused, breathless, he spoke, his voice calm, clear, and devoid of emotion. My legal team is preparing for divorce proceedings, Brenda. The words hung in the air. Her eyes widened, a flicker of genuine shock crossing her face, erasing the manufactured anger. She hadn't anticipated that. Outside the confines of their house, Todd Peterson's business maneuvers intensified with a new, aggressive precision. His company made rapid bids for parcels of land bordering Dale's farmland project, pushing prices up, creating a hostile environment. He also moved to acquire exclusive distribution rights for a new patented composite material essential for the resort's planned eco-friendly construction. It was a clear strategy to choke Dale's supply chains, to make his vision impossible to realize. One evening, Megan came home unexpectedly early. She paused in the hallway, caught by the raised voices from the study. You think you can just throw away years for some cheap thrill? Dale's voice was uncharacteristically sharp. Brenda's response was immediate and calculated. He's just trying to control me, Megan. He always has. He can't stand that I might want something for myself. Megan, confused and hurt, retreated to her room, but not before Brenda had skillfully planted the seeds of doubt, manipulating her daughter into siding with the aggrieved party. Dale saw it all with chilling clarity. The affair was never just about passion. It was a tool deeply intertwined with corporate espionage and financial sabotage. Peterson hadn't merely stolen his wife. He was actively attempting to dismantle his empire. Using Brenda as his instrument, The true ugliness of their collaboration was undeniable. Frank Johnson, Dale's partner, met him for an early breakfast. "This isn't going to be clean, Dale," Frank stated, stirring his coffee. "Brenda's already retained Patty Davies. Sharp as a tack, known for her aggressive tactics. She'll dig into everything. You need to prepare for a long, ugly fight." Dale nodded. He had expected no less. Acting on Frank's advice, Dale secured emergency injunctions, legal orders that prohibited Brenda from accessing or transferring certain key business assets. These were preemptive strikes designed to freeze her ability to cause further financial damage or leak more sensitive information. The legal paperwork piled up on his desk, a testament to the escalating war. The humiliation continued. Brenda and Todd Peterson began to appear publicly, not just discreetly, but openly. Photos of them at charity galas, at local events, even holding hands at the country club. It was a calculated display designed to rub Dale's face in the betrayal, to cement their relationship in the public eye. His audit of their finances revealed even more. Brenda had been covertly moving funds from their joint investment accounts into new private accounts in her name only. Not just the small withdrawals for gifts, but substantial amounts, a steady drain over months. She was systematically liquidating their joint assets, preparing for the divorce she now knew was coming. Megan, meanwhile, became more vocal in her disillusionment. "Why are you being so cold, Dad?" she'd asked one day, her eyes filled with accusations. "Mom says you've never cared about anything but work. Why can't you just forgive her?" Dale looked at his daughter, the pain of her misunderstanding a deep, silent ache. He knew he had to reveal the full extent of Brenda's betrayal to her, hoping for understanding, but recognizing the profound risk of alienating her completely. The business war intensified. Todd Peterson launched an aggressive, hostile takeover bid for Midwest Logistics, a smaller, crucial trucking company that formed the backbone of Dale's supply chain for the farmland project. It was a direct, brazen attack. Dale knew then what he had to do. He activated a complex, long-term counter strategy, one he had meticulously planned in the shadows. It wasn't about a quick victory. It was about dismantling Todd Peterson's empire, piece by piece, brick by brick. He would not just win, he would leave nothing for them to stand on. The local newspaper, usually reserved for city council debates and high school sports, splashed the headline across its front page. "Real estate tycoon Dale Miller in bitter divorce, corporate rivalry with Peterson." The story, citing anonymous sources close to the family, painted a picture of a marriage crumbling under the weight of Dale's ambition in an escalating business war. Dale faced a barrage of unwanted media scrutiny, reporters showing up at his office, photographers lurking near his mansion, all speculating about his family life and business ethics. It was an invasion, a public stripping away of his private world. Brenda and Todd Peterson, however, seemed to thrive in the spotlight. They used the media attention to their advantage, carefully crafting a narrative. In carefully staged interviews, Brenda appeared fragile but resilient, hinting at years of neglect. Todd Peterson, beside her, offered subtle support, subtly portraying Dale as a rigid, unfeeling workaholic, a man who prioritized profit over people. "Brenda deserves happiness," Peterson had said in one article, his gaze earnest. "She's a good woman who simply wanted to be seen." Then came Megan's interview. A local news channel ran a segment where Megan, her eyes red-rimmed, spoke haltingly about her mother's pain. "My mom has always been there for me," she said, her voice cracking slightly. "Dad, he was always at the office. We just wanted him to be present, to care about us more than his next deal." Her emotional testimony further damaged Dale's public reputation, adding a layer of paternal neglect to the accusations of corporate ruthlessness. Dale, a man who had always guarded his privacy fiercely, found himself forced into the public arena. His legal team drafted a carefully worded public statement, a cold, factual counter-narrative, devoid of emotion. It spoke of protecting family assets, of maintaining business integrity, of regrettable personal circumstances. But it lacked the raw, emotional punch of Brenda and Megan's story. It sounded exactly what they accused him of being: distant, analytical, unfeeling. One evening, alone in his study, the city lights shimmering outside, Dale felt a profound wave of loneliness wash over him. He looked at the framed photos on his desk, a younger Brenda, smiling brightly, a small Megan perched on his shoulders. He questioned everything. Had his ambition, his relentless drive to build, truly cost him his family? Was he the monster they painted him to be? A deep, crushing regret settled in his chest, a quiet torment. The public scandal had immediate repercussions. Some long-standing business associates, wary of the messy publicity, began to distance themselves. Meetings were rescheduled, calls went unreturned, and subtle shifts in alliance became apparent. "It's just bad for business, Dale," one associate had mumbled, avoiding eye contact. Even Robert Thorne, a key investor in his resort project, called with thinly veiled concerns. "This kind of negativity, Dale, it can scare off other backers. We need to manage this narrative." Dale soon discovered Brenda and Todd Peterson were not just letting Megan speak. They were actively leveraging her statements. His legal team confirmed that transcripts of Megan's interview had been submitted as supporting documentation in preliminary divorce filings, used to bolster Brenda's claims of emotional neglect and to argue for a larger share of assets. A renewed surge of hot anger coursed through Dale. Megan, his daughter, was not just misguided. She was being used as a pawn, a weapon in their calculated game. Frank Johnson, ever the pragmatist, saw Dale's frustration. "This is exactly what they want, Dale. To get under your skin. Don't let them. We have to focus on the long game. Emotion clouds judgment. We can't afford that now." Frank's words were a cold splash of reality, anchoring Dale back to his resolve. Dale began to compile a comprehensive file on Todd Peterson. It wasn't just about the current rivalry, it was about Peterson's entire career. He dug deep, looking for patterns of unethical business practices, past legal skirmishes, any skeletons hidden in Peterson's closet. He needed ammunition, not just for defense, but for a decisive counterattack. Meanwhile, Brenda's lifestyle, enabled by Peterson's burgeoning finances, became increasingly extravagant. New cars, designer clothes, lavish trips to exclusive resorts, all prominently featured on her social media, a clear, deliberate show of her newfound happiness, a direct message of spite aimed at Dale. His farmland acquisition, once a smooth process, now faced unexpected bureaucratic hurdles. Environmental impact studies were suddenly delayed, zoning variances became complicated, and permits were held up for minor infractions. Dale knew Peterson had political connections, and these delays were clearly orchestrated, a subtle but effective form of sabotage. One late night, Megan called. He answered, hoping for a genuine connection. "Dad?" she began, her voice flat. "Mom says you're trying to freeze her out, to take everything. Is that true?" He tried to explain, to offer his side, but her answers were clipped, dismissive. "I just don't understand you anymore, Dad." The call ended abruptly, reinforcing Dale's isolation, the profound chasm that had opened between them. The newspaper article was different this time. A new byline, not the usual gossip columnist, but an investigative journalist known for digging deeper. The tone had shifted. While still covering the ongoing divorce and business feud, the reporter mentioned unconfirmed whispers about Todd Peterson's previous real estate ventures, subtle inconsistencies in reported figures, and quick, quiet departures from past partnerships. The narrative wasn't entirely pro-Dale, but it was no longer solely Brenda's sympathetic story either. It indicated a turning tide, a deeper scrutiny of Peterson himself. Brenda, despite the outward display of lavishness, started noticing things. Todd Peterson's charm, once intoxicating, now felt like a practice performance. His manipulative tendencies weren't confined to sabotaging Dale's projects. They extended to her, to Megan. He'd casually suggest how Brenda should dress for certain events, or subtly criticize her choices, always framing it as for their image. The subtle control, initially flattering, now pricked at her. It was a faint, unsettling sensation, a quiet discomfort that brewed beneath the surface of their public display. The consequences of the scandal reached Megan more directly than Dale had anticipated. Her university scholarship, dependent on academic standing and good conduct, was put under review. The dean's office cited negative publicity potentially affecting the university's reputation. Megan was distressed. The scholarship was her ticket to a future she had worked hard for, a future away from the escalating family drama. The threat of losing it weighed heavily on her own. Dale, having compiled a comprehensive file on Peterson, now grappled with the ethical implications of unleashing its full force. Peterson's past was messy, filled with minor legal infractions, strong-arm tactics with smaller businesses, and a few outright morally dubious deals. Using this against him would be effective, but it felt like a descent into the same murky waters Peterson inhabited. Dale had always prided himself on playing by the rules, albeit aggressively. This felt like stepping over a line. He wrestled with it, the cold realism of the situation conflicting with a vestige of his old principles. Brenda confided in Patty, her attorney friend, over lunch. Her voice was low, almost hushed. "Todd, he's intense, Patty. Everything is a game. Boys, even with me. Sometimes I wonder if it's just business to him." Patty, a shrewd observer of human nature, merely raised an eyebrow, letting the silence hang. Brenda's doubts, once fleeting, were taking root. Then, a small victory. The critical land permit for Dale's farmland project, stalled for months by bureaucratic hurdles, was unexpectedly granted. There was no explanation, just a terse notification. Someone in Peterson's network had slipped, or Dale's counter-lobbying efforts had finally paid off. It was a small but significant crack in Peterson's carefully constructed wall of obstruction. Todd Peterson, oblivious or uncaring of Brenda's subtle discomfort, continued his performance. He dismissed her concerns with a wave of his hand, reaffirming his commitment with a new diamond bracelet or an impromptu weekend trip. "Don't worry your pretty head, darling," he'd say, a practiced smile on his face. "Everything is fine. We're going to be very happy." The words, meant to reassure, now sounded hollow to Brenda. Dale's investigation into Peterson's past revealed a consistent pattern. Partners, both business and romantic, were discarded once their utility ran out. A former business partner left ruined, a string of ex-girlfriends with cautionary tales. Peterson was a man who burned bridges with ruthless efficiency. Dale kept this information close, a loaded weapon waiting for the right moment. Megan, facing the very real possibility of losing her scholarship, made a tentative effort to reach out to Dale. "Dad," she began in a text message, "can we talk about the scholarship?" There was no mention of Brenda, no accusations, just a raw vulnerability. Brenda, consumed by her own anxieties and the endless scheming with Todd, hadn't been as supportive as Megan needed. Dale felt a flicker of hope, a fragile connection. Dale acted. He anonymously tipped off a regulatory agency about a minor environmental violation by one of Todd Peterson's shell companies, a small, easily fixable infraction that would nonetheless trigger an audit, tying up Peterson's resources and creating a nuisance. It was a precise surgical strike designed to disrupt without exposing his hand. Brenda's isolation from her old friends became more pronounced. Lunches were canceled, phone calls went unreturned. They found her new lifestyle, her constant name-dropping of Todd, her thinly veiled contempt for Dale, unsettling. The initial sympathy had evaporated, replaced by polite distance. The initial glamour of the affair had faded, replaced by the grim reality of constant scheming. The stress of maintaining the facade, the paranoia of being discovered, the endless legal preparations, it was exhausting. The stolen moments of passion had given way to long hours of strategizing, of poring over documents, of hushed phone calls. Dale, meanwhile, found solace in the precision of his corporate strategy, the complex web of legal maneuvers, the meticulous gathering of intelligence, the anticipation of Peterson's next move. It was a problem he understood, a battle he knew how to fight. It was a controlled environment, unlike the chaos of his personal life. Todd Peterson, feeling the pressure of increased scrutiny and the subtle disruptions to his plans, became more erratic. His phone calls to Brenda grew shorter, his temper quicker. He was less patient, his usual charm cracking under the strain. A subtle, almost imperceptible crack appeared in Brenda's unwavering loyalty to Todd Peterson. It was not a grand gesture, but a quiet shift in her eyes, a hesitation in her voice when she defended him. She was starting to see the man behind the carefully constructed facade. Stick around to the end to see how life's costly choices unfold. Todd Peterson's grand scheme, a meticulously planned bid to dominate the regional agricultural market through exclusive distribution and land control, was starting to unravel. Dale's persistent countermeasures, the bureaucratic hurdles, the regulatory tip-offs, the unexpected permit approval, were causing delays, raising costs, and disrupting Peterson's carefully laid plans. The cracks were small at first, but they were widening. Brenda witnessed it firsthand. She was in Peterson's office when he casually lied to a potential investor over the phone, promising inflated returns he knew were impossible. He then dismissed an employee's concerns about a minor safety violation with a dismissive wave, saying, "Just paper it over." It was a cold, calculated deceit that extended beyond Dale, beyond their affair. It was simply how Todd operated. Her trust, already frayed, broke. The charm had vanished, replaced by the stark reality of a man without scruples. Megan, called into the dean's office, was informed she was on academic probation. The scholarship, her lifeline, was now truly jeopardized. She drove straight to Brenda's new apartment, the one Todd had helped her furnish lavishly. "Mom," Megan's voice was sharp, raw with emotion. "My scholarship is gone. Because of all this. Because of you and Todd. All the lies, the drama. It's destroying everything." Brenda, caught off guard, stumbled for an answer, her usual composure cracking under Megan's direct accusation. The major court hearing for the divorce proceedings was a public spectacle. Dale's legal team presented a devastating case, exposing Brenda's premeditated betrayal. The financial records detailing the hidden accounts, the photos and call logs, even snippets of the fabricated geothermal deal, all laid bare her calculated actions. Brenda's lawyer, Patty, fought valiantly, but the weight of the evidence was undeniable. The facade of an aggrieved wife seeking independence shattered, revealing a colder, more opportunistic design. In a shrewd, unexpected move, Dale's company quietly acquired a defunct, forgotten railway line that ran directly through the heart of the farmland project and connected to key regional distribution hubs. The acquisition cost was minimal, the strategic value immense. It gave Dale a critical, independent distribution advantage, completely circumventing Peterson's efforts to control road and freight transport. It was a masterstroke executed in silence. Todd Peterson, already reeling from the minor regulatory violation, now faced a barrage of new problems. The investigative journalist article had spurred official interest. A series of lawsuits emerged from disgruntled former business partners, now emboldened by the public scrutiny. State regulatory boards launched investigations into his dubious ethical practices. His empire, once seemingly invincible, was under siege. Brenda felt the financial strain. Peterson's ventures, once fueling her extravagant lifestyle, faltered under the weight of legal fees and public investigations. Her own lavish spending habits, highlighted in court, were now a source of public ridicule. The designer clothes, the expensive trips, they felt less like liberation and more like an empty, desperate display. The Miller family name was now synonymous with scandal. The Miller mess, one tabloid called it. Megan, despite her academic prowess, found her social standing irrevocably damaged. Friendships became strained. Doors that were once open to her now seemed closed. She carried the burden of her parents' very public collapse. Frank Johnson, ever the steady hand, met Dale for a rare, quiet drink. "Don't get cocky, Dale," he cautioned, clinking his glass. "Peterson is cornered, but he's still dangerous. This war isn't over until the last document is signed, the last appeal exhausted." Dale nodded, acknowledging the truth in Frank's words. The end was in sight, but the path remained treacherous. Dale secured the loyalty of a former Peterson employee, a mid-level manager disillusioned by Todd's increasing paranoia and unethical demands. The insider provided crucial information about Peterson's offshore accounts, his network of shell companies, and his true financial vulnerabilities. It was the final piece of the puzzle, the key to dismantling Peterson's hidden infrastructure. Brenda, observing the methodical precision of Dale's counteroffensive, the calm, strategic moves that slowly choked Peterson's empire, started seeing him in a new unsettling light. He was not just a workaholic, he was a formidable opponent, a man who built with meticulous foresight, a stark contrast to Todd's frantic, often reckless, attempts to destroy. She remembered a time when she had admired that. A heated argument between Brenda and Todd Peterson erupted in a crowded restaurant. Their voices, usually hushed, rose to a public crescendo. "You promised me everything, Todd," Brenda shrieked, her face red. "And now look!" Peterson, his face contorted in a sneer, shot back. "You were supposed to be useful, Brenda, not a liability." The public display confirmed what many already suspected. Their relationship was fractured beyond repair. Megan, distraught and feeling utterly alone, sought advice from an unexpected source. Dr. Evelyn Reed, her sympathetic literature professor. Dr. Reed listened patiently, offering not solutions, but a quiet understanding of the complexities of betrayal and ambition. Sometimes, Dr. Reed offered gently, the hardest lessons come from those closest to us. Dale prepared for the final, decisive blow against Todd Peterson's empire. The strategy was complete, the evidence gathered, the legal filings ready. The emotional toll on all parties was evident. Sleepless nights, haggard faces, a weary acceptance of their fate etched itself onto their features. The battle was nearly over, but no one was emerging unscathed. The annual Midwestern Business Leaders Gala was usually a state affair, a display of polite power and quiet networking. This year it became the stage for a dramatic reckoning. Dale, impeccably dressed, approached Todd Peterson as Peterson was holding court with a group of potential investors. Dale didn't raise his voice, but his words, clear and precise, cut through the ambient chatter. "Mr. Peterson," Dale began, "I believe you have some explaining to do about your dealings with Sterling Industries, especially regarding that missing $2 million. Dale held up a single damning document, an offshore wire transfer, undeniable proof of Peterson's embezzlement. The color drained from Peterson's face, his smooth smile collapsing into a mask of panic. The room fell silent. Within days, a former associate of Todd Peterson, emboldened by the public exposure and prompted by Dale's legal team, came forward. He testified to a major embezzlement scheme involving phantom companies and inflated contracts, a systematic siphoning of funds that had propped up Peterson's extravagant ventures. The testimony was watertight, providing the final nail in Peterson's coffin. In the divorce court, Brenda's active role in the initial corporate conspiracy against Dale was laid bare. Dale's lawyers presented the full dossier, the fabricated geothermal report, the wire transfers from Peterson to Brenda's hidden accounts, the call logs detailing their coordination. It was an irrefutable paper trail, proving her premeditated betrayal. Her defense crumpled. The arrest came swiftly. Todd Peterson was taken into custody on multiple counts of corporate fraud, insider trading, and embezzlement. His empire, built on a foundation of deceit, collapsed overnight. Assets were frozen, investigations expanded, and the carefully constructed facade of his success shattered into a million pieces. Megan's future, already precarious, now hung by a thread. Her mother's confirmed involvement in illegal activities, particularly the financial misconduct, threatened to link Megan by association. Her university standing, her potential career opportunities, all were jeopardized. The shadow of Brenda's choices stretched over her innocent daughter. Dale faced an agonizing decision. He had the power to push for Brenda's full legal consequence, a move that would undoubtedly ensure Megan's complete alienation, but might also prevent any lingering legal taint. Or he could offer a path for Brenda that, while still punitive, shielded Megan from the worst of the fallout. He looked at the legal documents, his jaw tight. It was not a question of revenge anymore, but of Megan's future. The scandal rocked the local business community. Several prominent figures, board members, and investors who had ties to Todd Peterson found their reputations tarnished, their own dealings scrutinized. The dominoes continued to fall, leaving a trail of ruined careers and damaged trust. Brenda was found guilty on charges related to conspiracy and financial misconduct. The judge, citing the premeditation and the clear intent to defraud, handed down a significant jail sentence. Brenda stood in the courtroom, her face pale, her lavish clothes now appearing cheap and ill-fitting. The freedom she had craved had dissolved into a prison cell. Dale felt a hollow victory. The taste of revenge was bitter, mixed with the crushing reality of his broken family. He had won the war, protected his empire, but at what cost? The silence in his mansion was no longer a quiet torment, but a profound emptiness. Megan, heartbroken and humiliated by her mother's public downfall and criminal conviction, made her choice. She cut ties with Brenda completely. No visits, no calls, no letters. The betrayal was too deep, the public shame too great. Her loyalty, once divided, was now irrevocably broken. Frank Johnson, true to form, stood by Dale. He offered not sympathy, but steadfast support. "You did what you had to do, Dale," Frank stated, his hand resting briefly on Dale's shoulder. "Now we rebuild." The farmland project, now cleared of all opposition, moved forward swiftly. Construction began, the plans for the luxury resort taking tangible shape. But the initial joy, the triumphant vision Dale had once held for this project, was gone, replaced by a quiet, determined resolve. The land was fertile, but the victory felt barren. A small local newspaper, known for its thoughtful editorials, ran a piece titled "The True Cost of Winning." It questioned the immense price paid in human relationships, in familial bonds, when ambition and revenge were pursued to their absolute ends. Brenda, in her final court appearance before sentencing, offered Dale a desperate, tearful apology. "I'm so sorry, Dale," she choked out, her voice raw. "I made terrible mistakes." He met her gaze, his expression unreadable, a stone fortress behind his eyes. He felt nothing. The final divorce settlement was swift and brutal. With her criminal convictions and her proven attempts at fraud, Brenda was left with almost nothing. A small amount to avoid complete destitution, but a stark, humiliating contrast to the extravagant demands she had once made. She had gambled everything and lost. Todd Peterson's final sentence came down, a lengthy term in federal prison. His business reputation was utterly destroyed, his considerable wealth liquidated to satisfy creditors and fines. The man who had once swaggered through boardrooms and country clubs was now reduced to a number in a federal correctional facility, his ambition having led him to a solitary, humiliating end. Brenda served her time. When she emerged years later, she was a changed woman. The harsh realities of prison life had stripped away the superficial layers, the craving for luxury. Her clothes were simple, her hair unstyled. She faced a world that had moved on, a world where the entitlements she once took for granted no longer existed. Her freedom came without the burden of starting over, of facing life without the comforts she had once believed were hers by right. Dale meticulously rebuilt his business empire. The farmland resort became a triumph, a testament to his vision and resilience. But his public persona was different. He was more guarded, less outwardly triumphant. The lessons of public scrutiny had taught him caution. He still commanded respect, but it was a quieter, more austere presence, a man who had seen the raw underbelly of ambition and betrayal. Megan, through sheer force of will, navigated the academic probation, the whispers, and the judgment. She earned her degree, not with honors, but with a quiet dignity. She began to forge an independent path, working for a nonprofit in a distant city, slowly, tentatively trying to reconnect with Dale. Phone calls were short at first, then longer, filled with tentative questions about her life and cautious updates on his. The bridge was damaged, but not completely burned. Dale found unexpected solace in quietly overseeing the development of his farmland, the serenity of the rolling hills, the meticulous planning of the resort's sustainable design. It was a tangible act of creation, far removed from the destructive battle he had just fought. He walked the grounds daily, the silence offering a different kind of peace. He reflected often on the emptiness of revenge. He had won. He had protected his assets, dismantled his enemy, and seen justice served. Yet the victory tasted hollow. He had lost his wife, pushed his daughter to the brink, and sacrificed a part of his own soul. He realized that while he had won, he had simultaneously lost something irretrievable: the naive belief in unconditional loyalty, the comfort of an uncomplicated life. Frank Johnson became more than a business partner. He was the one-on-one constant, the steady hand through the storm. They shared quiet meals, discussed business, but also the deeper implications of what they had endured. Frank became a true confidant, a friend forged in the crucible of conflict. Some battles, Frank once observed, leave you standing, but with fewer reasons to cheer. The last of the legal battles, the final asset liquidations, the endless paperwork, it was all finalized. The closing of the chapter was not marked by celebration, but by a quiet sigh of relief, a collective exhale. The legal expenses were staggering, but the slate, at least legally, was clean. Dale began to invest in local community projects. He funded scholarships, supported struggling local businesses, and contributed to environmental initiatives. It was a different kind of legacy, one built not just on profit, but on contribution, a way to mend the fabric of the community that had witnessed his public unraveling. Brenda, after her release, attempted to find work. She faced the harsh realities of a tarnished reputation. Doors closed, applications ignored. She took on odd jobs, cleaning houses, working retail, struggling to make ends meet, a stark contrast to the life she had once known. The material luxuries were gone, replaced by the daily grind of survival. Megan, driven by a desire for atonement, perhaps for her own part in the earlier narrative, volunteered for a legal aid society. She found purpose in helping those who couldn't afford legal representation, advocating for the vulnerable, trying to right wrongs in a world that had so profoundly wronged her family. Dale sold the opulent city mansion. It was too big, too empty, too full of ghosts. He moved to a smaller, more understated home closer to the farmland, a place of quiet solitude overlooking the nascent resort. It was a deliberate choice for simplicity, for proximity to what he was building anew. He sometimes saw Brenda, in the grocery store, at a gas station, a fleeting glimpse. She looked older, her face lined with experience, but there was a quiet determination in her eyes, a reflection of his own resilience. They never spoke, but sometimes a nod, a silent acknowledgement of shared history, of two lives irrevocably altered. The emotional scars remained, deep and complex. But a quiet healing process began for Dale. Not a return to who he was, but an acceptance of who he had become. The once vibrant, ambitious spark in his eyes was replaced by a profound, if melancholic, wisdom. He had seen the true cost of everything. Years passed, softening the edges of the scandal. Dale Miller became a respected, if formidable, figure in the regional business world, known for his unyielding integrity. Brenda, having served her time, lived a life of quiet anonymity, working a modest job, her former glamour long faded into memory. Megan Miller, now a successful attorney, had fully reconciled with Dale, their connection forged in a complex, quiet understanding of their shared past. Dale often walked the grounds of his completed luxury resort, the air heavy with the scent of orange blossoms. He found a strange sense of peace in its quiet grandeur. He contemplated the choices made, the love irrevocably lost, and the harsh lessons learned about trust, ambition, and the true cost of winning. The story ended not with a triumphant roar, but with a quiet, reflective acceptance of life's messy consequences. The shattered family, the personal cost of revenge, the erosion of innocence, all lingered in the vast Midwestern air. Dale found a quiet contentment in the small moments, a stark contrast to his earlier, relentless pursuit of more. Brenda's path forward was one of quiet penance, forever marked by her past. Megan carried the burden of her family's history, using it to fuel her own commitment to justice and truth. The farmland, once a symbol of ambition, became a testament to resilience and the enduring, if bittersweet, human spirit. A final fleeting glimpse of Dale, silhouetted against a Midwestern sunset, alone but perhaps finally at peace. The echoes of what was and what could have been resonated through the quiet landscape. The narrative closed on the understanding that some prices, once paid, leave an indelible mark. Life continued, as it always does, under the vast, indifferent Midwestern sky.